Ephesians 5:15 through 20. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand that the will of the Lord is, and do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Not healthy. The first week we talked about a distracted life and the dangers of it being like taking different puzzles out of their boxes, pouring them onto the floor and mixing them, and then your life is trying to put them back together, but they're all piled on top of each other. This week we're going to kind of shift a little bit. We did last week, but we're shifting more and more towards the positive, the practical. And the opposite of a distracted life is a focused life. Very simple. The answer to a distracted life is a focused life. One where, similar to the songs we sing, the verses we read, it's not so much that we have to just remove all this stuff from the world and from our lives through legislation or going to a hermit community or something like that and remove all this stuff, but to choose where our eyes are going to be. Or as Kurt's going to talk about next week, talking about margins, where our calendar is and where our budget is shows a lot about where our heart is, that kind of thing. But the answer to a distracted life is a focused life. Let that sink in though. Very simple. Like a focused life knows this. This is our central truth today. A focused life knows every minute of every single day has value that can be wasted or invested. I think we're going to have that on the screen for you. A focused life knows every minute of every single day has value that can be wasted or invested. And that's a different idea than what is often projected, where we talk about different sayings like, I'm going to kill time. We'll talk about in a minute, time to kill. In 1987, this small athletic company that many of you might have known developed a new slogan that no one had ever heard before. There were all kinds of athletic departments. There were some big ones, some small ones. But this small-time rising athletic company developed a new slogan that when I say it, you'll know exactly who it is because they have spent millions upon millions of dollars just so that you know this. Billions of dollars overall so that we know the slogan, so that right away we see the icon, we know what they sell, or at least part of what they sell, and how long they've been selling it. Now, the way that they came up with this slogan, though, was the person who worked for the ad agency was actually attending how many kids are in the room? You know, this is getting PG-13 here. Was actually attending a public execution. And as the person who was the criminal that was about to be executed was about to go down, the criminal said, all right, let's do this. And the person there working for that ad agency said, that's something we could put on shirts that kids wear. Right? And just do it became Nike's big slogan that is still around today. You'll see it on shirts, you'll see it on shoes, you'll see it on the tag of every Nike product. Everywhere we go, just do it. Now, just do it is probably a good thing in sports. But here's why I bring it up. Because in real life, just do it to someone who's procrastinating, someone who struggles with distraction, struggles with margin, struggles with focus, just do it is terrible advice. And here's why. Because saying just do it to someone who is trying to do it assumes that the problem in their life is that they just need to choose to do it. If you're struggling with something and I say just do it, it's me saying, I believe that you have everything it takes to do this and there are no other problems. It's kind of like if on my way to get to church today, I go out to my car, I've got the trailers hooked up, everything's good to go, take my keys, I sit down, and I go to turn the key. Yes, I drive that old of a car, that I have to turn a key. Tell kids what that is if they haven't seen that. But I turn the key, doesn't start, doesn't turn over, doesn't make a sound. I have three options. Three very simple options. Option number one is I can quit my job at the church. I can say, car didn't start. I'm not going to church today. I'll quit my job. They'll hire another pastor. They can figure this out. Maybe that's a little extreme. Option number two is I can keep turning the key. I can just sit there. Just do it. Just persevere. Just keep trying. And I can keep turning that key. Option number three, you can see it on the screen, is I can get out of the car and I can address what the problem is and why the car is not starting. You see, in life, we have three choices. And oftentimes when we hear these like sermons on distracted life and we say, all right, I want to be focused. I want to take better control of my life. I want to focus on Jesus. I want to do better. It can feel like the sermons are like, just do it. You go to youth group. Hey, just read the Bible. You go to your Bible study. Hey, just pray more. You do that in your life. But the reality is that it takes more time than ever to address the real problems that got us to a place where we're needing to grow. And quit my job seemed like an extreme thing, but oftentimes in life, what ends up happening is when we have like a commitment, let's say it's a New Year's goal or something healthy, what ends up happening is we try it, we run into the problem, we keep trying, it doesn't work, and instead of doing the work to figure out what is keeping me from getting healthy here, what is keeping me from doing this, it's easier just to quit on the thing that I set out to do. And a lot of us are at places in our lives where we have quit on growth so many times because figuring out what the real problem is going to take more time, more effort, and more energy than I have. Kind of like just adding another puzzle to our lives. A focused life knows, though, that every minute of every single day can be either invested or wasted. What I'm thankful for is that God provided an outline for us in this. God provided an outline for us in what to do with our time. Tomorrow is not full of opportunities. Tomorrow is an opportunity, right? Tomorrow can also be exactly like today. That when you ask someone, how was your week? When you ask someone, how was their day? And they say busy, or if they just answer and say, I don't really know. A lot of times it means that our days are becoming exactly like the day before. That God desires for us to live with passion. God desires for us to wake up in the morning and despite what we might see, to be able to say, not only is it well in my soul, but also that today has opportunities to be better than yesterday. All right? If we do what we've always done, we get what we've always gotten. Have you guys ever heard like those sayings that say like I have time to kill? Or Kurt, have you heard the I have money to burn? Can I just tell you, those are like pet peeves of mine? Like super pet peeves. The idea of saying I have time to kill, because that is the mindset that time doesn't really matter. That I can just take this and I can just burn it. I can just kill it. But I believe that when we have our eyes on Jesus, we start to value time a lot more. All of a sudden, these moments, the moments that I take to go to church and sit here, the moment I take to watch this online and listen to it online, I'm using this as a time that I know matters. Now, Kurt read the book of Ephesians, and he just read a small portion, but it's pretty loaded. The book of Ephesians is a letter. Many scholars believe that it was Paul that wrote it. But actually, this was a letter that was all very practical, a lot of encouragement. But at the very end, he gets really practical. And that's what Kurt read, where he talks about what it looks like to apply all the things in the first 5 chapters, or the first 4 chapters. He talks about it there. And I have 3 observations today. First observation is this. A wise person lives proactively, not reactively. Verse 15, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Now, I want to zero in, if you can put that scripture back on the screen, on that word careful. Because careful does not mean to be slow and just kind of let fear. I think that a lot of times, like we can remember times when people said, be careful, and it made it sound like don't have fun. I remember all the times that like I wanted to go play with my friends, or I wanted to play a sport, or I wanted to take a risk with whether it's finances or whether it's with my time or a relationship. And you've got that person that always like in memory is like this like, you know, very like bubble boy sort of person. Be careful. Being careful can kind of come across like don't have fun. It can kind of come across like live a boring life. Live a life where there is no risk. But actually, be careful. The opposite of it is not fun. The opposite of being careful is to live careless. That when we say be careful, or when the scripture talks about be careful how you live, it's actually saying don't be careless with your time. That your life matters. That this isn't like playing an online game where you just regenerate if you make a mistake. That for many of us, we are carrying with us mistakes or the consequences of mistakes that we made or decisions we made years ago. And even worse, some of us are carrying the consequences of decisions that were made by other people. Family, friends, coworkers, kids, however, years ago or days ago. A wise person lives proactively, not reactively. The idea of living carelessly can be really appealing at times. The idea of saying, like, just leave your cares behind, just relax, just go forward and let life just hit you, let the wind hit you. And it looks really great in commercials. It's like, yeah, just they're careless and they buy a really great car and they're driving down the interstate with like the wind in their hair or their bald head or whatever, and they're driving into the sunset. And it shows nothing about the consequences of going out and just buying a new car if you can't afford it or if you don't need it. It never shows in these commercials or in these stories we see on social media the consequences of living a careless life. What we do see is we see a careful life is considered boring. But I want to flip that today. Like I said, to go, we don't want to live careless lives, but careful lives, full of care. When I care for something, like I don't just not use it. What I do is I see the value of it enough to protect it. Think about something that you value in your life. This is something that you don't forget about, where there are things in our lives that gather a lot of dust because they just aren't valuable to us. In Psalm, let's take it a step further, where the writer says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Number our days doesn't just mean like we learned how to count. That's not what it's talking about, that I can, count. Monday is 1 day, Tuesday is 2 days. But to number our days is talking about being able to see the value in it. If we were talking about money, to be able to say, be able to number your money, be able to number your resources, that you know where they are, you know how much you have, and you're able to spend it wisely. Same with your life, same with your seconds, same with your days. That to number our days means I know they are numbered. That this is not an unlimited resource where I regenerate like an online game, but that I have one life to live. The decisions I make today are going to impact this time that I'm on earth. No amount of money can ever buy a second of time. Anybody know who said that? Everybody younger knows. Yeah, that's a made-up character, Tony Stark from in Endgame, where he's talking to his dad. It's a little too late for me not to like spoil that, isn't it? It's a little late. I think some people that haven't watched it, they just don't care yet. But yeah, like Tony Stark is talking to a family member and says, then they're both like wealthy characters, and says, no amount of money ever bought a second of time. To number our days helps us to realize that we don't have time to kill. That actually, later on, we'll always wish that we had more money and maybe less of what we used that time to get. Observation number 2, a proactive life views every day as an opportunity. Now, verse 16 says, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Now, I want to zero in on that word opportunity. An opportunity is something almost like a gift under the tree. An opportunity is something that maybe we've done something to earn, but really it's there. And it's our job to not just see it there, but to actually open it, to actually use it. How many of us have opened a gift on Christmas or opened a gift that someone gave us and we never use it? Or if you're like me, I put it in my garage and then when I need it, I can't find it, and so I have to go buy another one and do that. I'm getting some head shakes. That's okay. We'll have an altar call later. And so I go buy another one, or I borrow one, or I'm really stubborn and I go, I'm not even going to do the job until I find that. But then I don't take the time to find it. Seeing every day, a proactive life sees every day like an opportunity or full of opportunities. You know what happens though? Sometimes I go into certain days of the week because I have certain meetings or I have certain things that I've got to do, and I don't see them as an opportunity. It's like I wake up in the morning and the day just doesn't have color. Now, does the day have every bit of opportunity that the other days had? Yes. You know, there's days where I might be sick. There's days where I might have certain things that are going on, a crisis that I'm dealing with, that it's not like enjoyable. But a proactive life sees every day as an opportunity to say, you know what, I can still reach. I can still move forward with my goals. I can still serve. I can still love. I can still nurture the things that matter to me. This is kind of like putting on glasses that are different. Have you ever been around somebody who's just really negative? Somebody who just sees himself as like a victim, sees himself in such a way that every day is worse, and there's always a reason that is somebody else. That's a reactive life. I'm reacting to the way that other people make decisions. I'm reacting to the way the weather can ruin my whole day. Or what if, and I'm not talking about toxic positivity here, but what if we put on glasses, not positive glasses, but opportunity glasses? That when we looked at life, we saw it as a gift. And so maybe when it rains, I don't like what it does for traffic. I don't like that it messes up my hair, right? I don't like certain things about rain, but I do like the free car wash. I do like what it does for the earth. I do like the reminder to be thankful for the way that God is providing for the earth and provides for us through the rain. You know, every single one of my complaints is tied to a blessing. Have you ever thought about that? That I can complain about, let's just say, a person, but at least I have a person in my life. I can complain about being busy with work, but at least I have a job. There was a point where I was praying for a job, and now I'm complaining about how busy I am or complaining about that job. Every complaint I have is tied to a blessing, whether it's people, circumstance, whether it's a car not starting, blessed to have a car. That if we were to give up all of our complaints, we probably wouldn't have any of our blessings, any of the things that we love having. I get so upset when my phone is dying, right? Why is it not charging? Or I get so upset when the computer internet is going slow. But it's all tied to a blessing that I have. That there is somebody somewhere who is praying to have the life that I have. And that's not a brag. It's just true about all of us sitting in here. That every day is an opportunity. And if people who live in the wealthiest nation on earth can't see every day as an opportunity, then our eyes must not be fixed on Jesus. Because I've been in rooms with people in less developed countries who, for some reason, find reason to worship extravagantly. That they could care less how many people are in the room. They could care less whether the guitars are tuned. They could care less whether they have instruments. They could care less what the weather's like. In that moment, when I watch them worship, they see this as an opportunity. They have these glasses on that see all that God is able to do and all that God is able to give them. When they pray, it's just different when you pray, seeing every day as an opportunity. Because it's not just, God, I hope today doesn't stink. God, I hope you can do this. But they see it as, God has given me the gift of this day, and I want to partner with the maker of the world to take advantage and to receive every opportunity, no matter how old I am. Observation number 3. This is our last one. Opportunities are squandered when we don't have a plan. Opportunities are squandered. Squandered means that they get away. They're wasted. It says, do not get drunk. This is verse 18. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. It's kind of a big word. Somebody used that today, maybe at lunch, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. Now, in this example, he talks about getting drunk with wine. But I need you to understand, like Jesus drank wine, like wine is never seen as like the great enemy there. But it is noted here that too much of wine, even then, which we can compare historically, like the alcoholic equivalent of wine in that day, first century Palestine, to today, I think it was like 1/16 the equivalent of today alcohol content, but still, like, doesn't say don't drink wine. But he uses this as an example, and maybe this was like the big thing then. Maybe people were just like getting plastered all the time, and this was like something he needed to like make clear here. Not sure. But like that was just one thing, and he just shows the contrast here. The author says, look, don't get drunk with wine. Don't let that have control of your life. Because let's be honest, today it might not be wine in our lives. It might be something else. That it might not be that we need to villainize that thing, but it's controlling our lives. It's what we use to numb the problems as opposed to fix the problems. It's what we use to just, whether we use it as me time or whether we use it as I deserve this, it's stealing from us because it's controlling our lives. Think about the things in your life that you don't really need to do, but you're thinking about them. And when you're done with work and the stuff you have to do, it's the first thing you think of. Missing meals. I had a mentor in college that said, whatever it is that you, like when you feel like you have to go to the bathroom, you still keep doing it until you absolutely positively have to run to the bathroom. That's the thing you're addicted to. Could be a relationship, right? You're just on the phone and you can't help. You can't say, give me 5 minutes to go take care of something important that we can all relate to. But that one thing, for some people, it might have been wine. That could have been the reason that was talked about there. But for us today, it's going to be something else. Could be wine, could be alcohol, but it also could be something else that we run to and completely disconnect to numb our lives. Opportunities are squandered when we don't have a plan. Oftentimes when we don't have a plan, we don't want to think of a plan. We just want to numb. In general, wine is no longer like a distraction the way it was back then, but there are distractions we've talked about in this series. And there's things that it's not going to say we're doing that won't send us to jail. They're not going to get us in trouble with our job. It's my time. It's not illegal. But it's actually something that is less important. In week 1, we talked about Mary and Martha and how Jesus didn't say, Martha, all the stuff you're doing is wrong. But he says, Mary has chosen what is better, and it won't be taken from her. Challenge today is for us to choose what's better. That there's something about making that choice that is freeing, but also makes us feel like we're in bondage. That having to make a choice that is something that's going to have some say in our lives is difficult. He talks about how wine takes control of our lives. Let God take control of your life. That can sound like bondage. That can sound like, I don't know if I want to give control of my life to something. But here's the two realities. We've already given our lives, control of our lives to something, whether it be a hobby, whether it be an activity that we do, whether it be a substance, a relationship. There are things that are taking our time away from us. But the place where we receive hope is actually when we put our focus, when we put our eyes, when we put our life in Jesus. So here's the question that I want you guys to think about today. What would it look like if you valued every moment of your day? What would it look like? If every moment of our day, some of you just need this. You need like a dollar sign by it. Like if I said, how much is 9 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning worth? And you had to put like a dollar amount for every time. And you're like, you know what? Like, actually, the 8 o'clock to this is like super valuable, but actually this afternoon time is not very valuable. What if every moment of your day was valuable? What if every moment of your day had value versus this work time has value, but this time I can just do whatever, doesn't really matter? What if every moment of your day, but also the way you valued your time, you also gave that value to other people's time? It would change how we treat each other. Could you imagine if everyone on 70 or on 25 valued your time as much as they value theirs? Like, traffic would be way different, right? Be waving. Well, there's already waving. It's just this would be 5-finger wave as we go. When we value our time and we focus on Jesus, all of a sudden what happens is we start to value other people's time too. Because all of us were made by God. All of us are loved by God. And when I can start to see your time as valuable, I see you as valuable. No matter who you are, whether you are in a shelter or you are in a big old house, your time matters. That I can be thankful. That when I am sitting, scrolling, let's be real, I have a prop for that. When I am mindlessly scrolling, that time matters. When I'm sleeping, that time matters. When I'm working, I don't want to give distractions valuable time. I think for every one of us, there's a choice we have to make with what we do with our time. But going back to just kind of like the focused life, there's 3 options. We can quit, we can keep trying what we've been trying, or we can take the time to address the problems. And here's what I would suggest. I've got a slide here that just shows kind of the 3 options, and these are 3 things that I've done in my life. Okay? I'm going to read over these, then I'll just kind of tell you what they are, and we're going to have these on our website. For you, I have the links. If you're on YouTube, you can go down below, and we'll have the links there eventually. But you can create a personal manifesto. 2 is a rule of life. And 3 is a time budget. And I want to put those up there because I want your minds to try and figure out like what those are. A personal manifesto. Number 2, a rule of life, and a time budget. Now, this is 3 things. I think the best case scenario today is that maybe one of these gets done because we're busy. We have a lot going on. Let me just tell you what they are, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I've done in my life, and I'm still working through these things. First one is the personal manifesto. A personal manifesto is really just what is the best version of myself and who am I? Because a lot of us, when we live a reactive life, we've never thought about the person that we want to be. All we've ever done is be what others need us to be. At work, I am this. At home, I am this. With these friends, I am this. But who am I? And if you are walking with Jesus, you're going to give Jesus a lot to say here. Who was I created to be? See, before we just keep turning the key or we quit on growth and we just give in to a busy, distracted life, we have to evaluate. Who did God create me to be? Second is a rule of life. Now, it's not rules for life. This is not like making a list of all the rules I live by. A rule of life is actually like a really old term that actually is more like a guide, kind of like the roads that you drove to get here. Nobody got on the road this morning, at least none of us. Nobody got on the road this morning and went, this is so limiting. right? Why do I have to drive on this road? Why did somebody else get to decide how I get to where I go? No, because there's benefits to the roads. There's benefits to having like a rule or a guide that is put together. Not only does it protect pedestrians from knowing where the vehicles are and the cars are, but it also allows us to not hit other cars, right? It's amazing the power of painted lines can keep like 3-ton vehicles traveling 40 miles an hour plus from hitting each other. Because we want that order, we want that structure, we want that rule. A rule of life is just putting together, go ahead and put it up again. A rule of life is taking the personal manifesto and who am I created to be and saying, in order to be the best version of myself, what must I value? What must I depend on? Meaning, if I'm going to continue to be and become the person God created me to be, the best version of myself, what is the road I need to travel on? Now, it doesn't mean that every day is just going to be this easy thing, because some of it depends on other circumstances and certain goals that you've got, lead goals, lag goals, that kind of thing. But in order for us to have a rule of life, to build this road, you have to write it down. You have to write down, what is it that I need to do to be the person God created me to be? And the last one is the time budget. And I'll be honest, this is where most people start. Most people start with, well, if I'm busy and distracted, I just need to do inventory of my life. But all that does is just get us frustrated because there's no end goal, there's no plan. A proactive life ends with the time budget. It ends with, to be the best version of myself, what must I make time for? What must I, and I used a pretty strong word here, what must I sacrifice? Because I bet there are things on your schedule that you love. Now, we have interruptions all the time. We have things that come up. There are things that we did not plan for. I can have every minute of every day scheduled, and we're going to talk about it next week, the need for margin. The need to literally, in your time budget, schedule margin. The same way that the roads that we travel on, we have a gutter, or even if you're traveling on like a main road, before you get to the rail on the side or the ditch, there's a margin there. There's a margin so that if you're looking at your phone, or if you're talking to somebody, if there's an animal and you need to swerve a little bit or something like that, that there's a margin to go into before you're off the side of the road. But the time budget is when we actually look at what are the things in my life. A lot of these you should not do on a computer because of distractions, but get a piece of paper out. And again, we've got some PDFs you can download on our website to kind of guide you through that. If you need to come back to this time in the sermon to hear me talk about it, you can. But I've done all three of these. And I can tell you that the easiest one was the time budget, because I had complete control. I just went, all right, what are the things I want to do? But what I found was the distractions that came up in my life that were contrary to who I want to be, they came into my life so much easier before I actually created a personal manifesto of writing down what are the things that I want my life to look like. Who do I want to be, and who am I? Like the dreams that I have. Now, not all of our dreams are going to be able to happen right away, but to write them down gives them power. And to write them down puts them at a priority place in our brain and allows us so that when a distraction comes in to try and steal away that time that it's meant to be for who we are, kind of an alarm goes off. This is not who you are. This is not who you are. A personal manifesto, I would recommend you have it like note card size, and that you just have it somewhere where you'll see it and read it every single day. A rule of life, like I said, is a road map. But I want to read a verse here that goes along with that. It's found in John 15, and these are the words of Jesus. When they're talking to Jesus, they did the same thing we do. They said, we just want you to get really practical. How do we do this? You're talking about all these things about how we need to walk with God and how we need to get our lives right. And Jesus, he does this thing where he kind of speaks in illustrations, which I love, but he also does it in a way so that you have to really lean in and think about it. He's not feeding us like baby food. He's feeding us meat that we got to cut, we got to cook, we got to cut. and we've got to try and take in. He says, I am the vine. This is Jesus speaking. And my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. If you're into gardening or whatever, or anything like you can't just have the resources of the plant can't go to like dying, unfruitful parts of the plant. So there's actually a lot of strategy, a lot of science, finesse to gardening, right? So that it will be even more fruitful if resources are not going to the unfruitful parts. Verse 3, you are already clean because the word I have spoken to you. He's talking to his disciples, his followers, the men and women that were with him. And then this is key, remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Now remember, Jesus said, I am the vine. Can you bear fruit unless you remain in me? And it goes on to like unpack that even more. But when we talk about a rule of life and we talk about a personal manifesto, we can put our hope in all kinds of things. But Jesus is saying, look, if you want your life to be fruitful, if you want your life to be anything close to what I created you for, to the life that you want, you have to what? You have to remain in me. Now, what that means has a lot to do with the rule of life. Jesus being the vine is similar, and us being the branches is similar to like that road. That our rule of life has so much to do with how closely we are walking with Jesus. And every song, every point, and everything in this series has come back to this main thing. Where are your eyes? Where are your eyes? I'm going to close with this. John Wesley, he had this sermon he did called the Sermon of the House. And what he did, and I'm looking at the group I've got today, and I'm going to emphasize the points I believe that we need to hear here. But he says there's this house, and it's God's house. And God's house is this big porch. And then the yard is just muddy, and there's no roads or anything like that. And God desires for us to be in his house, the invitation that's there. And there's people, whether they go to church or they've just been raised in religious practice, they're kind of on the porch, and they could go in at any time, but their eyes are kind of on the mud. They're kind of on the freedom of being out there, the possibilities of that. Some of them are even like, they're just kind of sitting on the porch with their feet in the mud. And then there's people that have had lives that are just really hard, that are out there and they feel like they're just stuck in their lives. And they don't know that they're invited into the house, but their eyes are on the house. And all they think about is there any way for me to get out of this mud? And John Wesley, he didn't say it as good as Jesus does, so I'll switch over here. That Jesus says, I'm standing here inviting you. No matter where you are. And I'll say it. We can never hear that invitation or even accept it or do anything about it if our eyes are not on him. So for those of you that feel like you are just far from God today, that you have made every mistake in the book, or you feel like you're just too different, or you're too this or too that, but your eyes are on Jesus. He sees you. He's inviting you. He's inviting you to make your rule of life in line with him, to remain in him. And a harsh warning for those of us who have been raised in church. We've got all the religious stuff down. We might even have a Bible with our name on it somewhere. It matters less how close you are to God. It matters more which direction you're going. Where are you today? We sang that song, It Is Well, earlier, and Chelsea and I were talking about how that song can come off as like toxic positivity. Oh, no matter what's going on, it's well. Hey, no matter how busy I am, no matter how distracted I am, the state of things in my life, I can just say it is well. That's not at all what the song's about. that if you listen to it as you sing it, I can say it is well, not based upon my circumstances, but because my eyes are on Jesus, the author, the perfecter of my faith. So as we reflect today, there's the question: am I living proactively or reactively to my own life? And what am I willing to do about it today?